So what we're going to do in this game is create this little duck shooting game in Ventuz. So these ducks will kind of go across the screen and we just click on them and we knock them down, we get a point, right? And this here, if you can see here on the image, it's got like a timer going on. You have your score here. So I've cut out some of these elements that we could use already prepared. Not all of them. So I have one duck that will just repeat. But of course you can make a green duck, red duck, whatever. You can change these colors yourself. I have this frame with the hole in it and then the water. So we can create our own backdrop and whatever we want in there as well. If you want to animate the curtain sliding in like the actual game, feel free to do so. We can close this. Let's jump straight into Ventuz. So what I'm going to start with is bringing the duck in. So we're going to go to axis. We're going to drop an axis in. And then, because Ventuz is fantastic, so you can drag and drop. So you have this duck texture, like I said. I didn't cut it out very well, but it's got a bit. It's slightly different from the original, but it's a duck. We can see it's a duck. So you can just drag and drop your assets straight in, and they will import to your project, and it will be assigned to a material. So we want to say no light, right? And then what we want to do is go to geometry and add a rectangle. And there is our duck. We have a duck on the screen. Now, what I want is when it's hit, when the duck is hit, I want it to rotate on the X. But I want to set that pivot point to the bottom of the duck. So I'm going to change the alignment to bottom. So now when I rotate, let's make this bigger. When we rotate, boom, it goes down. There we go. Of course, this could be a 3D object. It doesn't have to be a 2D. I'm only showing you a simple way, but this could be an actual 3D object. It does the same exact thing, right? Anyway, there you go. But we have a duck that we can animate now, or interact with. So we're going to use a mover. So we're going to grab a mover. This mover, we're going to change the settings. So we're going to go from 0 to 90. And on the mode, you want to change this to one shot. We only want it to happen when we click on it, right? So if I was to take the x-axis and link it to the mover, and the duration, we don't want it to be slow, we want it instant. So let's say 0.5, right? Boom, nudge. And my mistake was I didn't uncheck swing. There we go. Now it stays down. So if I reset this, nudge, it's got hit, reset, it goes back. Now if I want to kind of make that a bit more fun, I can put a oscillator in between. So if we go to logic and we go to maths effects, we look for the right click and look for the oscillator. The oscillator I'm going to drop in between the X, and this I'm going to add some dampening, right, and it will make it more bouncy. So when I click on it, if I click on it now, nudge, you can see it's got this kind of bounce, right? And then if I reset it, it bounces back up. Now you can play around with the values. I'll say something between 10 and 12 is you get a nice, you get a nice effect. So nudge, it's not too much. Maybe 8. Let's see, bring it down. It depends what you want. Nudge. There we go. And we could probably speed this up. It's a bit too slow, so let's say 0.3. Let's see how that does. Bing. Ding. There we go. But yeah, so we've got a reset. We have a way to reset the duck when we click it. And when we have a way to, reset and shot. So this is going to be us when we shoot it, it hit, and reset when we start the game again. So we have that kind of built. Really simple, you see. There's no real logic to it. When we hit this, we also want it to trigger an effect or to say +1, right? Yeah, because in that game, they had like a +1. So I'm going to add that too. So I'm going to go to axis. I'm going to get some text. So I'm going to go to the text, get some 2D text, block text, and I'm going to move this up somewhere here. And I'm going to change this to, say, +1. Now you can make a better font, of course. So if you want to change the font, you can. So you click on the font here, and you can go here, edit, and then you can go to your system font. So if you have a system font, then you can kind of scroll through. You can, if you click here, you can scroll through and choose a font that you would like. It doesn't matter, to be honest. Let's see, what do we have? Let's get something like juicy plain font there. Boom. Okay, I'm going to import that into my project and then save it. So that font is now in my project, ready for us to use. There we go. So it could be +1 or +2, whatever you want. This is just a visual thing, right? This changes to 1, and then I'll put a space. Or maybe because the plus I want to have different size, right? So I'm going to have this as just the plus symbol, and then I'm going to duplicate this, and the 1 slightly bigger, like so. And make this a little bit smaller. There we go. +1. Now I can stick this in a group, for example. Just put a solid color on here. So these are the same. And let's also add an axis in front of this and just name this +1. So we know this is the +1, right? And we can choose, it's going to, so as you do it, and then it can animate off or whatever you want. It doesn't matter. So I want to change that center pivot of this, because right now it's scaling from the actual center here. So I'm going to go center scale, and if I turn on my bounding box and change that center scale, I can move the X and Y like so. So now it will scale from the center here. Boom. So I can move this position somewhere here, rotate it a tiny bit. There we go. So now it will scale from here and then go off. All right, so that will connect to the nudge as well. So this will be, we'll use a mover, it's fine. So we're going to do a swing, right? And we're going to get, so let's get a mover. So we've got animation mover. And then I'll just call this +1. All right. And we're going to check the scale value. So right now we're going to be we're at 0.67. Your value might be different depending on how you scale it. I'm just doing this, but we can round it up if we want. I could say it's 1. All right. So we're going from 1. So we know it's going to be one shot, the same. We're going to leave this on swing though, because we just want it to appear and then go off, right? So we're going from the minimum will be 0 and the maximum is 1. Let's see what happens if we take the scalar and drop it in. So when I hit nudge, boom, +1, boom, +1. So it just kind of flashes on, right? So there we go. We have a duck that we can hit. And then we have this +1. Maybe this would be 0.6, a little bit quicker. Ew. All right. Let's group these two together. So let's put these in a group. So we can go to World tab, Group, drop them in there. And I'm going to merge this to a container. I'll rename this duck. All right, because we're going to have multiple ducks. So this is the one duck we're going to build on. And then I can delete this group in here because we've already grouped it out here. I'll just use it just to create the group first, then I'll get rid of the extra node. inside here because it's not really needed. We can put an axis though in front, so this can be the parent, so it allows us to move this anywhere we want or adjust it to our needs, right? Now we need to add the interaction and we need to make sure these two trigger at the same time, right? So I'm going to go to logic tab. I'm going to go to event and this will be pressed, right? We call this pressed on touch pressed. And we're going to go to interaction tab. We're going to get a touch button and we're going to apply this to just the group. That's fine. We can apply it to the group like this. And we can call this, I don't know, hit. Alright, this is our button, right? Or you can call this button BT. It's a button. Treat it as a button, right? And when we press this button, so if we click on the object, every time I click on it, you can see in my inputs, you'll see just next to my big head, you'll see it's triggering. But what I'm using is going to be the touch pressed, which will be the second one, right? So we want to nudge. We know we want to nudge this at the same time, but we also want to nudge the number as well. So when I hit event, invoke, boom. So you saw a +1 and the duck goes down, right? If I reset, we also need a reset button. So we're going to need to reset these, right? But for now, what we're going to do is take the shot and we're going to link it to our button and we're going to say touch pressed. Right, so now we have that done. The hit's done. Now we just need to make an event for the reset. So we're going to go events. We're going to go to logic. We're going to grab an event. And let's call this one reset. So reset will go here and reset. Now we have a reset button that we can expose out. So we can reset our game. And then if I click it, boom, we've got that score, right? So we have it, we're knocking it down. We displayed that we've got a +1, but we need to keep track of where the score is and add that score, right? That we've done something, we've triggered the event, right? So there's a few ways we can do it, but what we're going to do is we're going to expose the pressed event on the fired. Let me move myself. Let me make myself a little bit smaller. Bear with me. The magic of OBS. Whoa. Can trick myself and move over here. There we go. Now you can see the outputs as well. Anyway, apologies. Anyway, so we have pressed and reset. So reset now resets the animation, and of course press does what we want. Like I said, you can expose. We want to expose when it's pressed. So we want to say when it fires, tell us. And this is where we're getting it from this event, right? We're going to say tell us so we can add a value to it. So we're going to say and that will expose it. Now we can say pressed fired, right? And you could or duck hit. It could be duck. You can call this duck hit. It doesn't matter. You can name it whatever you want. And you can change this category. It can just be called duck if you want to make a duck category. And then on the reset, I want to expose this on the input and called reset duck. Reset duck. And I'll put this in duck category as well. Okay. So now when I leave this container and we go back up one, on our duck, you can see we have reset duck, which if I press it, it resets the duck. And when I hit the duck, you'll see duck hit, boom, +1, right? So that's pretty straightforward. So now we have an interactive duck that you can click on and it says +1. So we've made a simple animation with barely, we didn't do much work. We just did a few nodes, kept it really simple, and nothing too complicated right there. Okay. Make sure you save your work as we go along. So I'm going to save as duck game. All right. And what we'll do, let's put a point system. So we're going to add a point system right now. So we can say, oh, we're going to count up every time. All right. So we'll use the counter. but we need to display this. So we can grab a counter since we're on the logic tab, grab a counter and just place this into our content window. We're going to go to world tab, we're going to go on axis, and we're going to add the font. So you're going to add the font, so you're going to go same way we did it on the +1. You're going to go text 2D, drop it in, block text. You're going to change the font if you want. So if you want to use the same font that you've already imported into your project, you can do that. So if you hit refresh, it will show you the updated fonts they imported. So here's that juicy fruity plain. I'm going to say there's a modifier. So when it keeps asking you about this modifier, it's really asking you if you want to reset the default preset here to this font. I'm just going to say no. But you have the option to set a default font as your preset too. So, and you can create your own preset. So like you can see here, you have default headline, highlight text. I know I'm going a bit off the topic, but if I was to rename this and call this juicy, juicy font, and make sure I select this and say plus and hit OK. It says it's saved, right? So now every time I go here, I have juicy font, right? So you can save the fonts in your presets, which saves you time. So if I want to go from the headline back to juicy font, I can now change that, no problem. I don't have to go edit, then choose the font from the project. So it saves you time, so bear that in mind. Anyway, let's add a solid color. Let's make sure this text is center. And I'm going to edit the block text here, right? So it just says, right now it would just be 0, 0. All right, so we've got 2 zeros. This is going to be our score. I'll put it up here, the top right for now. We can move this later and position this. So this is going to be called our score. We can rename this score. And the score will be coming from the counter, right? So we're going to take the output of the counter. So every time we click, we want it to go forward, right? And as you can see, it adds already for us. So the value goes up. And when you hit reset, look what happens. It goes back to the beginning, start the game again. So the counter is a perfect one for this. So all I'm going to do is take the text and link it to my counter. So now I click forward. Boom, boom, boom. So every time we receive a click, we're adding a point. So every time we click a duck, it adds a point to the main counter, which will be, we'll use this counter to give us our overall score, right? You can see it stopped at 9 and I can't go any further. Right? So you're going to, of course, want to extend this to a reasonable amount for your game. So I don't know how many ducks you have, but if you have 20 ducks and you knock all 20 down, then that's your maximum will be 20, right? I'll just put something ridiculous. So we know I'll put 60 for now. We know we won't have 60 ducks, but you can go up to 60, for example. Maybe you have a duck that does +2 and another duck that does +1, right? And the cool thing is, let's go back into our duck container. No, actually, no. Let's leave it like that. I'll leave it. I was going to do something. I'm making it overcomplicated. Yeah. So let's continue with this. So reset is back to 0. So now what we want to do is have our ducks moving, and we want a few more and link it to our score. I'm going to make this into a family so it doesn't get messy. Control-Shift-F. All right, something like this. So that's nice and clean, and then we have our duck. So I'm going to go to axis, put one in front, so world and then axis, and put that in front of the duck. I want multiple ducks. Let's say we have more. We're going to go more, and we're going to create instance of, I don't know, let's put, should we put 8 in a line for now? Let's put 8. Of course, you can change this at any time. And we're going to use the arrange node to help us arrange this. So we don't have to position them manually ourselves. We're going to choose, let's do center chain, boom. Now we have 8 ducks in a row. Of course, you can space them out too, which would be sensible. Now, we need it for it to go from 1, like so. We need it to go across the screen, right, like this. But at the same time, I want it to repeat as well. So we need it for it to loop. We need the ducks to loop. So remember, so what we need to do is we need a start point and an end point, like for the ducks. So they're looping all the time. So what's one way we can do this? We could create an instance which would then make the loop happen, I guess. And then we're going from always one way to the other. So the best way maybe is, let's get our image in our assets. So let's get that. Let me minimize this group. Let's bring in the frame and the water. Let's get that in so we can work out how the distance for our ducks and where they're traveling. So we have something. So I'm going to block this for now. Control B to just disable those. I'm going to add an axis into the scene. I'm going to drop the frame asset in here. I'm going to place it on a rectangle. And I'll just scale this up. Boom. To fit the scene. Like I said, it doesn't need to be perfect. So I'm going to put something like this. Maybe I'll move this down. We don't really need, do we need to keep the bottom? Yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't know if we should keep the bottom or not, but make sure this is set to no light. No light. There we go. Okay, so we filled the screen up. If I was to turn the ducks back on, Control B, and the score, for example, Control B. So that's just unblocking them. I'm going to make sure this sits in the foreground, so I'll move this forward slightly, like so. Like I said, it's not perfect. The image is not perfect, but it'll do what we need. Now the ducks can go across. So if that looks okay to you, I think they look alright. Maybe it's slightly bigger. Now we have some ducks that can go across. Let's add the water as well so we can see how that would look. Boom. Can just drag the water in. What I'll do is actually just control and drag the axis from here. Control, drag the rectangle in from here. Change the water to no light. And just reset this. And scale this up. Like so. There we go. And the ducks, of course, the water will be behind the ducks. So let's reorganize this so the water can go behind there. It's the backdrop, right? And then, of course, you'll stagger these. We'll offset the animation. So we'll create in 3 lines of ducks, but we'll just do 1 right now. So we'll do this one, then we'll duplicate. Let's get the loop working on these ducks. So we want these ducks here. So if this is the let's say this is the starting, we need a starting point. Let's find it. So I'm going to create an instance of this. I'm going to say link here. I'm going to add another axis in front of the linked one and offset this. Like so. So that's the start and that's the end. Oh, sorry, this is the start, that's the end, right? So as long as I make sure, if I say the start was like this, and wait, if this is the start here, and then we get to the end, I need to make sure the start one, I need to put a different color on this so I can identify this. So I'm going to add a tint to this, a tint of red, so I can see which one is the start and the end. Why is it not affecting it? That's not good. So that's not affecting that. So no point doing that. Let's see if we can turn the bounding box on there. I don't think that would help. But okay, we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I believe that should be the next one, right? 8, 9. Have we got 9? Oh yeah, I guess 9 because we had the extra one. So let's get rid of that one. Boom. There we go. So it's 8 now. Okay. So I just got to make sure that the start here and this is the end here and the start here are lined up, as if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm gonna say this is the start. So this value here, X, I'm gonna get a mover. Copy this value, start, and then I'm gonna go to the end. Make sure, is this the, yeah, this is 8. So make sure this one, I'll make sure that touches here. So hopefully that loops. So if I get that value, copy and paste on the end, that should loop on the X. Let's see, it may not. There we go. So now we have looping ducks, right? Going extremely fast, hyperspeed. But of course we don't want that, so we want to. But you know what you could do over time? You could make it harder for them to hit. So by speeding up the ducks. So you could have randomized those duck speeds if you wanted. But something like that. Maybe a bit too slow. But there we go. If you're throwing objects at it, then that might be a decent speed. Boom. Boom. There we go. So we knock those down. Boom. And they're going to go across. And then when you'll see, they'll stay knocked down. So when it loops back, they will still be knocked down. So let's wait for them to come back round. Let's knock a few more down while we're waiting. There you go. So you can see they remain knocked down. So we're getting there, right? We're getting there. Okay. So we have our ducks looping and moving. So what we want to do is actually have them contribute to our score. So let's get our score. So our score is here. And I want the score in front of this. Let's put the score up here. All right, so I'm going to reset this and move this. Let's move this forward in Z space. Oh, there we go. So every time we click a duck, it's going to add to our counter. So we're going to go to duck, 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 duck. Maybe we want to get all the lines in, so we can actually just get all of these in. So let's call this duck line 1. And then I'm going to control and duplicate. So we've got duck line 2. Of course, we've got duck line 2, and then of course duck line 3. And then we'll offset the animation, really simple. Something like this. So we've got 3 lines of duck. And I'm gonna just make these like so. Make this into a family. Control F. Keep it nice and clean. Because when we start to open these up, we're gonna have a lot of ducks, right? We're gonna link all of these ducks. Yeah. 1 second. I'll be with you. I'm back. Sorry. So we have our ducks, like I said. So what we want to do is we're going to offset these, but we want select all our ducks. So we don't need to set them on the we only need to select them on 1. So I'm going to select all these ducks like so. and these ones as well. And now we have all our ducks here, all selected, right? All 3 lines. Kind of collapse that so we have them here in the content window. I'm using the middle mouse button to zoom in and out. And what I'm going to do is shift select with the score. Right. Oops. Okay. When you click off of it, you know, you have to select them again. Unfortunately, if you do that, it happens. There we go. Shift select all of these. And duck line 3. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, we have them all selected. And what we want is our counter to go up, right, forward by 1. So I'm going to just drop forward on each of these ducks. So it's connected to each one. Now this is very simple logic. It's not, there's nothing fancy about it. There are different ways. Like you could say use events and use arguments to say, well, this event and it sends +2, or so event will say send 2, and it will send a 2. Like you can do certain things, but for this, I'll keep it really simple. But maybe in another video we'll do a more complicated one. But yes, I'll try to keep it simple, you know, so it's not too overwhelming, hopefully. And you can see we get nice spaghetti here. Nice organized spaghetti. Look at this. Beautiful. And of course you could, if you want, you can kind of move this up right to the top like so. Now we want all the ducks and the counter to reset at one time. So what we can actually do is just grab a new event. So we can go into our logic tab in our toolbox and go to event, call this reset all. The reset counter goes into here. You can select all the ducks, just hold down the left mouse, select them all, and you got reset duck, boom. And that will, if I hit now on this event, reset. So I'll do is move this up here or over here, wherever you like, it doesn't matter. You can choose how you want to keep your spaghetti tree organized. But I'm going to say reset, and then we reset, all the ducks are reset, that goes back to 0. If I start clicking on the ducks, you'll see, but now counting up as we hit these. Boom. There you go. So we have now a score, and we have ducks moving, right? Now let's offset these movers. So what we can do is go to our duck lines. Oop, oop. I'll just right click in just to collapse these, just to make it a little bit easier. So we've got our duck lines, right? And we have these on movers. And the cool thing is you have an offset. So you can now offset these like so. Offset that one. And then if you want, you can even adjust the speed, maybe one slightly faster, you know. So let's reset these. So click on score. If I want to reset, I just click on the score, go up here, reset, boom. So now you can see there's our ducks. And of course we can adjust the Z. So, you know, this one's at the back and this one's there. So we've got some kind of depth. We have a duck game. The basics anyway. As you can see, the middle one there is going a little bit faster on the lane, but it works, right? It does what we need. Remember, we want the water as well to move, so what we can do is we can actually maybe animate just the texture itself if we want. So we can click on the texture, we can go to UV mapping 2D, UV 0. Make sure we take clamp off, right? and say set this to wrap. Now we can move this along the x-axis as well if we want, right? So we can go linear and that will animate, right? I'll just use the built-in mover here rather than, you can of course pop that out. The reason I'll just do one, and then what I can do is just copy this down, right? So let's get a nice speed. No, 25. There we go. And let's now control. So I'm going to control shift click and delete those two. And what I can do is control and drag this down. So now I have moving water. Of course, we want different speeds because this has a mover now. And like I said, you can offset that time and offset that speed a bit. Maybe bring it slower. Maybe speed that middle one up. There we go. And then for the bottom one, again, you can do the same. You go right click here, go to the smoother properties. You can offset this more. Maybe this is slower or faster. It doesn't matter. You know, I'm just doing it by eye. There we go. So you can see we have multiple layers and they're working, right? So now I can click boom, 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 boom. We have a nice little game. Remember, you can add color to the score if you want. This doesn't have to be that. It can be 3D text. It can be 2D text. Entirely up to you. Let's pick a color that will make it stand out. Let's go for this blue. There we go. Boom. So if you had a say like a hummingbird laser or something like similar, when you throw, say you threw objects at the screen or break the beam, then you know you trigger the point. You may notice we have some Z sort problems here. We can just fix this, just push this back, and maybe we'll scale it up a tiny bit. And maybe we add I want to add some additional movement in here. So you'll notice actually on my texture as well, I also have this line here. That's just because of the texture. I didn't crop it properly, but ignore that. It's fine. Just mine really a little bit, you know, tiny details. You won't notice it, hopefully. You can also adjust that in the actual mapping. Maybe we just scale it up on the Y. There we go. And you don't see it. It's off the screen. But there we go. Maybe we add some additional movers. So maybe we can add some mounting like this if we wanted. So we could go here, linear. I'll adjust those values. Maybe I'll pop this out instead. Might be easier to put the values in that I want. So maybe going from here. And I'm just doing this by eye. The value, so I'm dragging it. Maybe it goes this low and then paste this in here. So that's our min and max we figured out. And then we're going to link the Y position on that. Now that's going to go up and down. Make sure swing is on. You can probably go with cosine on this one. There we go. Now I've got more of a wave simulator. Let's make a reset button. So we'll make a little button here that can reset our game. Because right now there's no way to reset this, right? Without us going here and hitting reset. Right? So we're gonna go to we're gonna make a button, like make a little round button. So world. I'm gonna get axis. I'm gonna rename this reset, so we know this is the reset button. All right, and we're gonna get some geometry, of course. So let's use a circle. Of course, you can choose to use, I said 3D geometry or whatever you want. The circle is still 3D geometry. It's just flat, right? Anyway, and you can place it whatever texture you want, right? I'll just give it a color for now. I'll leave the designing of the interface and the colors and the buttons up to you. Let's make should we make it red? Make it orange. Oh no, orange. Let's make it, I don't know, whatever, green. The green is gonna be our reset button, right? Put a little hole in it. Maybe you have a second circle. Boom. And I'll add an axis. So I'll just use spacebar just to speed up things. And maybe this one. That this color is gonna apply here. So now we have a kind of a button, right? Anyway, we're gonna add the interaction. So touch button in front. Right. So this is our mesh that we're interacting with. And of course the reset button is, bear in mind, you have to also consider usability. What I didn't think about is what happens if someone was to throw an object or hit that, it will reset the game. So you need to maybe think about that too. Or if it was on a timer, then you may not need the reset anyway. Because you could just say on a timer based reset the game and trigger that event. Anyway, I'm going off topic. I'll keep it simple for now. So we have this event, reset. We want to say, okay, on touch pressed, reset this. All right, so I'm going to use an event. So I'm going to go logic, grab another event, and the shot will go to the touch pressed, and the reset is just going to go here. So when I click it, it resets. So if I go here, click, 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 reset, boom, resets the game. So I don't need to go here into my content window now to reset it, because I can just play it in here and I can reset. And of course, then you can move this button to whatever you like, and you can change the color. And I think the green was too much, but yeah, there you go. Let's just put some text on there so you can see. I'm going to add axis, text 2D. So you can see I'm using shortcuts. So as you get more comfortable with Ventuz, you'll start to learn to use the space bars, the shortcuts, and then you can look for what you want. And I'll say block text, and then, and because we saved that preset, as you see, and then maybe this just says reset. And of course, I can control and reuse this material here and give it a different color so it stands out, and make that small. Maybe not too small so we can read it, but then so maybe we'll have to adjust our overall button size like that, just for this purpose. But yeah, of course, if it was a real product, a real design, you'd think about the usability, the logic, the design, the look and feel. You'd spend time doing that. And maybe make that yellow like a duck, or yellowish. But yeah, there we go. So we have a reset button. Boom, 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 boom. There we go. We made a duck game. And then, of course, you can add the additional backgrounds and stuff like that, because you noticed in the original image it had like a sky and had some gears. If you want to add gears, for example, let's go here. Let's go to geometry. Let's see, what have we got in geometry? Is there a way? I thought there was a way to add gears. I can't remember if the cylinder or I'm imagining. I might be imagining, but I'm sure there was a gears. Or maybe not. Maybe I just saw it in a demo. In one of the Ventuz help demos, when you hit F1, for example. Here we go, like interactive cylinder. Like I think I've seen like a gear. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah. Anyway, close that. But yeah, if you want to do anything, reminder, hit F1 and you can pull up a mesh for that. If I could remember that scene, which scene it was, that would be amazing. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Maybe looking at the toolbox, I'll remember. Maybe was it an animation or I do not remember. I can't remember. Anyway, I mean, I'm sure I can go here and say PNG gear and get like a gear texture or something and stick it in the background. You could do that. And you can have them rotating here, or we could probably just make one. Let's just make one. So I'm gonna place it somewhere here. An axis. Let's get some geometry. Circle. So this will be our circle. And then we can put a hole in it, for example. Then we need some pieces, right, to stick out. One way we can do this is we can use this with a spreader, so we can get axis. Let's use a rounded rectangle, right? So it's a bit softer, and then just move it out like so. We know the position is, I moved it from the center pivot to minus 3.9, right? So when I change the rotation center of this to match, it'll be 3.9. It'll be opposite, so it'll be 3.9 instead of minus 3.9. 3.9. So that will now rotate along the circle. Oh, here we go. Basically, you can see now we have a gear. If I also use now a spread, so if I go here to world and use spread and apply that to here and say no, increase the count. Oh, not that one. Increase the count on the rotation. There we go. Now we have a gear. So, I mean, we created a gear. It's I don't know. I didn't have to go and Photoshop something or download a PNG. You can, or you can bring it in a 3D model, but you could also make it out of simple elements like that, and then put those two into a group like so. Put a material in front or color, put a color in there. Boom, boom. Give this a kind of grayish kind of look. There we go. Move this over, and because it's a group, you can see I can rotate this. I can just have a mover and just use linear, and that will spin. Of course, I can slow that down, and you get the idea. So at this point, I'll leave it to you to build on. You can add to it. You can make it more complicated, more fancy. Like I said, um, you're not stuck to that. You can build up the elements in the background. I've kind of left that open for you to create your own kind of game. You see, I've just kind of, if you remember the original, they had these gears here, but they were kind of, some were static. But yeah, you see, I'm just duplicating this now and then reusing it. And I can scale these and, there you go. So you can add all kinds of fancy graphics. Of course, you can put a background as well in. Like I said, you can even just go here, get an axis. Maybe you want to use the gradient rectangle. We haven't really used that too much. And scale this up, push this back. Boom. There we go. And then tweak the gradient here to what you want. So right now it's horizontal. We want it vertical maybe. We want to say the first color is like a blue. Oh no. Second color is a darker blue. And you can play around with that. But yeah, hopefully that was useful. I don't think I'm using it right, but yeah, you get the idea. I think it's slightly faded. But yeah, But there you go. Or the other way is, like I said, you can just get a color. Maybe you want to get solid color. Boom. Add a rectangle. Boom. And then go texture, base, and use the preset gradient, 1D gradient, and get one of these sky ones, or maybe this chrome color, because it's already got kind of, so it looks like that's something in the distance. And then I could play around with the UV map, UV 2D 0, and change that mapping. There we go. Can of course increase that gradient size and bring this down or up. So play around with it, see what works, what doesn't. Add clouds into that background. Maybe I could expand this and you know, make it a lot more. Maybe you want to add a menu before you start the game. Reset. You want to save the best score. You can do all of that. Anyway, see what you can do. Have different ducks, different colors. Have a play. But hopefully that was useful. Oh yeah, you may have also noticed I can still click them when they're down. So you might want to put a logic to say, well, once you've clicked it, it's not, you deactivate the button. To do that, if you was to go here, for example, I'm kind of going a bit extra, but on the button itself, you could just maybe make that inactive. So the button's inactive, or you disable the enable. So you can enable it when it's reset and disable it when it's hit. After it's hit, say disable this. I'll leave that up to you to figure out. But yeah, there's a lot you can do, but hopefully that will get you started with making games using Ventuz as well. Remember, you could project this onto a big wall, throw some tennis balls at it. Boom, there you go. You have a nice interactive installation. Don't forget to save your work. Enjoy your day, morning, evening, and night. Goodbye from me. Bye bye.